Hey everyone, Charles here. Welcome back to the channel. In this week's video, I want to take a look at a topic from the DevNet Associate exam. And I want to look at how we can use APIs to interact with certain Cisco devices. That's something that we need to know a lot about for the DevNet Associate exam. In this video, we're going to look at interacting with the DevNet Sandbox version of Meraki by way of the API through a solution called Postman. Let's jump in and take a look. The first thing I want to point you to is the Cisco DevNet page specifically for Meraki code. If I look at the code button here that's colored in green, you can see the URL for that. It's github.com/Cisco DevNet/Meraki-code.git. So we're going to import this into my own local file system, and then we're going to use that inside of Postman to interact with Meraki. Also, I want to point you to the Meraki DevNet Sandbox area. You can find this on the DevNet Sandbox page, where they have lots of free sandbox labs where you can try out different environments. This particular one is for Meraki. Again, you can find that just through a quick search, and you can see that this one is what they call an always-on version. That means you don't have to have a reservation. You can simply navigate to this page at any time, and they provide you with login credentials, as you can see here on the left side, to be able to log in and interact with this Meraki instance. So it's a great way to lab things that you might not have physical access to. Additionally, we can see the API key listed here that we can use for the dashboard API. So that's what we're going to leverage inside of Postman. Before we do that, we do need to get our Postman environment set up. So let me jump into my Ubuntu instance. And in order to get our version of Postman working with Meraki, we do want to import some code from that Meraki DevNet page. Let me jump back to this GitHub page, and I'm going to actually copy this URL, because what we're going to do is we're going to clone the contents of this into my local file system. So let's go over to my Ubuntu box, and we're going to clone that data from the DevNet site onto my local system so that we can get everything set up with Postman. And what this is going to clone is specifically some collections and environment files that we use with Postman. DevNet actually provides these to us to make things easier when we're interacting through Postman. So I'm going to go here in my terminal, and I'm going to change into my desktop directory. In my instance, you don't have to put these there. That's just where I'm going to choose to clone these to, just to make them easier to locate. I'm going to make a directory, and I'm going to call that Meraki. Then I'm going to change into that directory. And now I'm going to say git clone, and I'm going to paste in the URL that I copied from GitHub. I'm going to hit enter. You'll see that it clones the entire contents of that. If I do an ls command, we can see I have a folder named Meraki-code, so let's go into that. And running the ls command again, you can see lots of contents in there, lots of subfolders, so that's good. Now let me minimize this. Now that I have that locally, we see that here on my desktop. I'm going to go into Postman, and I'm going to show you how to get Postman set up to easily interact with Meraki. What I want to do here, on the left-hand side, you'll notice several sections. We have collections and environments, APIs. So I'm going to import. I'm going to click this import button, and then I'm going to choose to upload files. I'm then going to point that to the directory that I just cloned from GitHub. You'll notice that that is Meraki-code that was on my desktop, and I specifically want to go into the Postman subdirectory. We're going to see 4 different files here, and I want to specifically import these 2 that begin with Meraki Dashboard API. So I'm going to select both of those, and I'm going to hit open, and you'll see that one of these is a Postman environment, the other one is a Postman collection. So that's good. Let's click import, and we'll let that complete. And now you'll notice in my collections window, I now have a Meraki Dashboard API collection. Additionally, under my environments, you'll see that I have a Meraki Dashboard API environment. So now I am ready to begin interacting with the Meraki API. Let me go back to the DevNet Sandbox page. And again, we can see there is a link here for the DevNet Always On read-only version. We have our login credentials. I already have this open in a new window here, and you can see that there are various test organizations already included in here. And we can actually select any of these. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to just click on this API test. And once I click on the API test organization, you can see that it does bring me to a Meraki management page for this particular organization. We can see that there are various networks already included in here that we can run some testing on. So back here in our DevNet Sandbox, let's actually copy the API key for the dashboard API. Let's go back into Postman and let's see where we can plug that in. So first off, let's scroll down to the bottom of this environment. And the first value we want to change is the base URL. We want to copy and paste this also from the Cisco DevNet page that is provided. So let's paste that in, and you can see that that is api.meraki.com/API/v1. Now, additionally, we want to make a new variable here, and we want to name that API key. You'll notice that the K is capitalized. It's very important that we have that exactly correct. We want to paste that in both the initial value box and the current value box. With that in place, let's click our Save button. And the last thing we want to do is actually activate this environment. We can do that through this drop down on the top right. We can choose our Meraki dashboard API that activates our environment as evidenced by the check mark that we see by that. So we can close this environment out now. And let's take a look at our collections. If we look under the Collections tab on the top left, you'll see that we have 4 different collections in here. All of those are GET requests. These were imported from the GitHub page that we used from Cisco DevNet. Let's look first at this list the organizations. This is a GET request that is going to pull down the organizations that we have administrative access to. If we hover over our base URL variable, you'll see that this is going to reference our environment variables that we set up, and it's going to insert api.meraki.com/API/v1. Additionally, it's going to insert our API key when we make this GET request. So let's click Send, and let's see what we have access to. And fairly quickly, you can see in our response body here, you can see that we have lots of information returned. We have information about every different organization that we have the ability to manage from this Cisco DevNet page. Let's see if I can expand this just a little bit for us so that we can see. So we have the URL pulled down, we have the name, we have the ID, we have the licensing. So these are all of our organizations. Now, one thing that we can do once we've pulled this information is we can actually take this ID value, we can highlight that, we can right click it, and we can say Set Meraki Dashboard API. And this is going to let us set a particular variable very easily. It's going to set this variable for our environment. So let's set this as our organization ID. Now, if we look at our environment here, we go back to our Meraki dashboard and we scroll up just a bit, you can see that this populated our organization ID. So it's a really great way that we can pull information and use that information to more specifically make other requests. Let's go back to our collections window, and we can also do something like list the networks in an organization. You'll see that we have a new variable here for our organization ID. It's set to the value that we copied and chose earlier. Of course, our base URL is the same. Let's send this, and this should show us a list of networks inside of that organization. And in fact, we do see that. We can scroll down and we can see information about these. We can see the name of these. We can see the different product types. And as we did before, we could, of course, copy certain values here and begin to populate those into our environment as well. So let's find a value here for, I think there is a DevNet value. Yes, there's a DevNet lab. We see that named here. So let's click the ID for this. We will select the entire ID. We'll right click and we will set the dashboard API value for the network ID, because this is, of course, what we're seeing here. If we take a look back in our Meraki dashboard API environment and we scroll up, we now see this network ID listed inside of here. Let's go back to our collections and let's look at list the devices in an organization. Let's run that and let's see what happens. And just as we did before, we have lots of information. We can see this top instance is a camera. We can see the latitude, the longitude, the actual address. And so you can see how pulling this information allows us to continue to shape our environment and be more specific with the GET requests that we are performing. Let's try our final GET request. Let's scroll down here and let's add one more value to our environment. Let's take this one that is MR84. You can see that this is a wireless device. So let's grab the serial number. Let's highlight the entire serial number value here. Let's right click. Let's set our Meraki dashboard API value for serial because that is our serial number. If we look in our environments once more, just as confirmation, we should see this serial number listed in here. And indeed, we do see that serial number. Let's go back to our collections. And the last thing we can do is we can list the clients in a network. So this should show us all of the clients currently connected to that particular wireless network, and that is displayed back to us. We can see the MAC address, the IP address, the username, and so on. Now, there are certainly more specific collections in here. You'll notice a products folder. We can actually expand that. We could go into the wireless folder. We could do things like configure. We could monitor that. We could do all kinds of different things. So just these 4 outside of the main folders are just some general options we can do. And again, we can get more specific through looking at specific product subfolders. So let's take a look here. We're under wireless. Let's say configure, and let's scroll down. We see SSIDs. Let's expand that. One thing we could do is we could say list the MR SSIDs in a network, MR being a particular model number of wireless client. Let's run that, and let's see if that returns any information back to us. And it does. We can see that the name is Booyah. That is not enabled. It's a click-through splash page and lots more. So we're seeing the actual SSIDs and whether they are or are not enabled on a particular wireless device. So hopefully you can see how easily we are able to interact through Postman with something like Meraki and all the things that we're able to do and affect. Now, we've only looked at GET commands, but we can certainly see things like put commands listed in here and lots more. So we're able to not only retrieve information, but we're also able to do configuring against that device. I hope you found this content useful, and I want to thank you sincerely for watching.